Are you having issues making reservations during this RV boom? Well, I have 5 tips to help you secure a campsite in this episode of Travels with Delaney. Welcome back, everyone. My name's Patrick, and if this is your first time here at Travels with Delaney, welcome. We're your channel all about RVing and living life to the fullest. We've been doing this thing called RVing now for a little over 15 years, and through those years, we've made some mistakes, we've learned some things along the way, and we just try to share those with you so that you can avoid some of the frustrations we've felt over the years. So there has been an RV boom over the last 12 to 14 months. More people are buying RVs and using them, which means getting a reservation for a campsite is becoming increasingly more difficult. But what I wanted to do this week was share with you some tips that might help you make reservations so you can get your RV out and enjoy it this summer. So let's go ahead and go on inside, and I'm going to share with you some tips I've learned over the years booking campsites and also by utilizing my past background in hotel management. I learned a little bit back then when I was running hotels on how reservation systems work, and I'm going to share that with you in this episode. Tip number 1 starts with a calendar. That's right, the calendar. See, depending on where you want to go and what time of the year you want to go, some campgrounds will book up way in advance. A good example is we go to Florida every year for Christmas typically, and if we want to get in at Walt Disney's Fort Wilderness Resort, that resort books up a year or more in advance. So you need to really plan out your trips as far in advance as possible. Now, if you're like us and you tend to not plan that far in advance, I'll get to some other tips to try to help you out so you can still experience some amazing campgrounds last minute. But if you know for a fact that you're planning a big trip to, let's say, Yellowstone, and you want to stay in the park, then you want to make sure you're checking a year or more in advance to know what the booking rules are and that you're logging in on the day that you're eligible to book for your trip. We have friends that literally will stay up till midnight just to book campgrounds that they know will fill up literally in a matter of minutes or hours. So it's really important to try, when possible, to look at your calendar up to a year or more in advance and plan out those really important campgrounds that you want to stay at. Tip number 2 is don't give up. Be persistent. So if you really want to get into a location, make sure you're constantly checking, because there can be times where inventory may have been held back and they will slowly release it, or maybe there's cancellation. So when I really want to go to a campground and the first time it may show me that it's not available, I don't give up. I just keep trying. And I literally will try every day. Now, a couple years ago, you may have saw the video where I surprised Patty with a few nights at Walt Disney World over Christmas to celebrate our anniversary. I ended up literally getting that reservations just a few days before we left, but I had been trying for over a month. Sometimes persistent pays off, and you may be able to luck into a site at a campground that you really want to stay at. Tip number 3 is if you're not finding what you want in the online inventory system, you may want to consider calling the campground or resort directly if that's a possibility. Sometimes they may have inventory reserved for call-in reservations, and they may not make everything available in their online inventory. But even if they actually are full, you still may want to call. There's a couple reasons for that. Number 1, when we were at Thousand Trails Orlando, I met with David Brown, one of their sales professionals, and he was telling me if we ever get into a situation where we want to stay at one of the Thousand Trails with our membership, we should actually call that park directly, because he said many times it'll show up unavailable online, but if we just call directly, they may be able to get us in. So I think that's good advice from somebody working in the industry. But let's say you call and they tell you, sorry, we are completely booked. There's always the possibility that they have a wait list, and you may be able to add your name to a wait list so that when they do get cancellations, as opposed to putting that inventory back into their online system, they may just go down a wait list and start calling people. So I never think it hurts to at least make the phone call to find out, do they have inventory available? And if not, do they have a wait list that we can join? If you're enjoying this video and finding any value in it, we'd sure appreciate it if you give it a thumbs up. And make sure you stay to the end because I said there was going to be 5 tips, but I'm actually going to throw in a bonus for you if you've made it this far. Tip number 4 is when you put in the dates that you want at a campground and it comes back that nothing's available, consider putting in different dates. Now, I'm not saying change the dates of your vacation. I'm saying, let's say you wanted 6 nights at a particular campground. What I like to do typically is I like to go in and go night by night then once I know it's not available. What you'll typically find is there may be some of the nights available, but some of the nights are not available. And so there have been times where I have been able to piece together reservations doing that method to where maybe I'm able to book the first 3 nights, get those booked, and then I'm just persistent in trying to put together the other 3 nights. And worst case scenario, at least we get 3 nights at that campground we really wanted to be at. Now, some reservation systems will actually allow you to look at their complete calendar for every site. You can go in and actually see every site in a particular campground, and it'll show you what nights it's available and what nights it's not. And sometimes what you'll find is a night here and a night there. Now, understand, if you end up piecing together 6 different sites over 6 nights, you're going to be moving all 6 nights. They're not going to find a way to allow you to stay on a single site during your stay, because those types of sites, you are booking a specific site. That's different than, let's say, if you're on the KOA reservation site where you're not booking a specific site, but you're booking a site type. So maybe you could get 3 nights in a full hookup, and then maybe you can get the next 3 nights in a electric water site. Eventually, you may be able to switch that into a complete 6 nights by working with that KOA. However, understand there's no guarantees. If they stay sold out for those site types, you're going to be stuck and moving. But I've never really had an issue with moving once during my stay, and we've done that before to where maybe we started for a couple nights in a water electric site, and then on the 3rd day, we had to pack it up and move for the next 4 or 5 nights into, let's say, a full hookup site. So that might be an option for you to consider. But again, remember the whole point here is if you can't see the availability by site and day, consider going in and booking or looking at each separate day of your stay to see, do they have any sites for a single night available? Or sometimes I'll even group them together. Like I said, maybe do the first 3 nights. Is there something available? That may help you in trying to find out what is available and can you at least get part of the stay booked. Number 5. Know your campground's cancellation policies. Why? Well, many parks have a set cancellation policy, and if you know that people can't get a refund if they don't cancel at least 7 days prior, if I still don't have a reservation, I am checking 7 days prior to my arrival, because that's when people may at the last minute make cancellations, and then as those go back into inventory, you may be able to scoop up the reservation that you really want. So if you're not finding what you want, look on the campground's website, find out how soon people can actually cancel to get their money back, and mark that as a target date on your calendar. Over the years, we have been able to get some amazing sites with last-minute reservations. We have literally stayed at parks with amazing views to where all of our neighbors were talking about how they had been up at midnight 6 months prior to get their sites, and we had booked them 2 days prior. So be prepared if you can travel last minute to look for those last minute cancellations, and you may be able to secure yourself an amazing campground, maybe with an amazing view at the last minute. Bonus tip time. Now, sometimes we kind of get it in our head that there's one place that we want to stay for our trip, and there's nothing wrong with that, but maybe you should consider expanding your search, and you may find there's other great places to camp in the area, and they may have availability. A good example of this is our upcoming trip this summer. We were really wanting to stay in the national park at Acadia. I had checked the booking window, which this year is 60 days out. I was up at the exact moment when we could book. There were sites available, but unfortunately, apparently my fingers on the keyboard weren't as quick as some others. And so we were unable to get the sites we wanted for the dates we wanted up in Acadia National Park. But in the end, when I expanded our search, I was able to find some other options in the area. And actually the one that we have for this summer, I think, is actually a little bit better. Now, it's a little more expensive than staying in the national park. However, we do have full hookups. We're only 30 minutes from Bar Harbor, but we're also only 30 minutes from some really cool towns along that eastern shore of Maine. So it's going to be a great location to go out exploring for the few days that we're there. And I just had to open up my search and get outside of what my original plan was. So don't be afraid to check out alternatives to traditional commercial campgrounds or state parks or national parks. There's some amazing camping opportunities out there, and you've heard us talk about them in our videos. Things like the Harvest Host program might be a good way to fill in nights and experience some amazing overnight experiences with business owners, whether it be a winery, a brewery, a museum, a farm market. But beyond Harvest Host, there's some other apps out there you may want to consider looking at. Things like Boondockers Welcome, if you don't mind boondocking. This is where a lot of times businesses or individuals will open up their properties for you to overnight with them. You could also look at Hip Camp, which has a wide selection, everything again from campgrounds to private property, where you can pay to stay overnight with your RV. And so just use those apps and tools and resources that are out there, and most likely you'll still be able to find a place to go RVing. And ultimately, it should be more about that journey and going RVing as opposed to, I have to stay at this one particular resort. So a lot of people thought we were crazy when we announced we were headed to the East Coast this summer and we didn't have a single reservation in place. And I can tell you at the time of this recording in early May of 2021, we actually have pieced together over 6 weeks. Now, we have reservations in those key areas where we knew it was going to be tough to find places at the last minute, places like Acadia National Park or that area of Maine. And then on the in-between days or the travel days, we're going to be utilizing things like Harvest Host and possibly things like overnight camping or overnight RVing at Cracker Barrels and Bass Pro Shops and whatever else we find along the way. So it can be done. It's just, will you put in the time and the effort? And that's really what it takes when you're looking for reservations during this massive RV boom that's going on right now in 2021. Let me know what tips and tricks you have for finding RV sites and booking reservations. Place those down in the comments. Not only do they help our video grow, but they help our RV community so others can read your comments and you can assist them in finding reservations and making their RV dreams come true. Thanks for watching, and until next time, everybody, we'll see you on down the road. Good night.